Hello and welcome to this episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Monday, January 23rd. Hope everybody's having a day so far. Coming off of a very exciting weekend in the world of sports. You had playoff games all weekend long, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. It was a very exciting weekend. It was a fun weekend, and we are now down to the Final Four. It was the Elite Eight. Now we're down to the Final Four. Chiefs, Bengals in the AFC, and in the NFC, it's the Niners and the Eagles. So looking forward to next weekend. Both those games will be on Sunday. It's the conference championship, and after that, you got the Super Bowl, and that closes out the NFL season. A wild, wild year here. 3 games left with the 2 games next weekend, and then the Super Bowl 2 weeks after that, and then you have the Pro Bowl as well mixed in the week prior to the Super Bowl. Still a lot to go this year. Still a lot. The dust still has to settle. A lot still has to happen. Giants are eliminated. They got blown out on Saturday. We'll get into it. It's a Football Monday recap. We'll get into all the games over the weekend. We'll get into all the games. Get you a little bit ready for the both the championship games, and for the losers, where do they go from here? Because to be honest with you, all the teams that lost this weekend, maybe outside of the Jaguars, you feel like there's some questions. I mean, the Giants have they got a lot of work to do on their roster. You start to question the Buffalo Bills. What do they need to do? The Cowboys, what's the future of their roster? What does Jerry Jones do this offseason? I know last night he said Mike McCarthy's job is safe, but is that true? Is Dak Prescott the quarterback next season? You hear some people today say, do they need to go after somebody else? So they're always, an interesting team to follow. So we'll get into all that as well. Nets have had 2 big wins over the past couple days. Rangers will be in action tonight at the Garden against the Panthers. Knicks and Nets both have the day off. And the Islanders will be in action tonight against the Maple Leafs. So both hockey teams are in action tonight. Both basketball teams have the night off after a big win yesterday to close out the West Coast road trip for the Nets yesterday against the Warriors. Really 2 big wins against the Jazz and the Warriors. They'll be in action on Wednesday against the Sixers on a front end of a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday. Thursday will be against the Pistons. And then Saturday, they'll welcome the Knicks to the Barclays Center on Saturday, which is a part of NBA Rivals Week, they're calling it. So a lot of action to come. Kentucky got a big win as well on Saturday against Texas A&M. So they're finding ways to win. They're getting the job done. That's now 3 straight wins since that very bad Alabama loss. They've now won, both bad South Carolina losses at home. They've now won 3 straight. 2 of those have, really all 3 of them have obviously come against SEC opponents. One of those came up against a top 5 Tennessee team on the road. And the other 2 came up against 2 good teams. Georgia was a comeback. Texas A&M was a comeback. You now get Vanderbilt tomorrow, and then you get Kansas over the weekend, which is a big game there. They can make a massive statement in these next 2 games for Kentucky, so looking forward to that. But we got to start off today. We'll get to the NBA games. I want to get to Kyrie Irving as well, talk about his success the past 2 games. Nets are now 2-4 without Kevin Durant, which isn't terrible, but considering the way it started, we were 0-4 without him. We've had 2 back-to-back really big wins, and it seems like this team seems to be heading in a little bit of a better direction without Kevin Durant right now. It seems like they figured out a way to win without him. Now they got to consistently do that until Kevin Durant comes back, so we'll get into that as well. With all that being said, this is the Bubbs on Sports podcast, and let's get right into it. So, quickly, before we get to the Giants, and then we'll get to the rest of the league, I went 3-1 this week on my game picks. Got all the games correct except the Giants-Eagles game. I was drinking the Giants Kool-Aid a little bit. Hindsight 2020, I think we all knew the Eagles were the more talented football team, and it showed on Saturday. But a 3-1 week, so I'm now 9-1 overall. 10 playoff games in, 9-1 overall. So pretty good, 179 and 101 on the year, and as 102 on the year rather. And as long as I get, 1 pick correct out of the next 3 games, the 2 conference championship games and in the Super Bowl, I will have 180. I will crack 180 wins for the year. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing if I can do that. Hopefully I go 3-0 and nail all 3 games that left this year. Get to 182. But still a lot more. Still 3 more games left. We'll see how it all plays out. We'll get to the rest of the league. We got to start off with the Giants, though. And again, we'll get to the games. We'll get to the Chiefs game. We'll get to the Bills game, Bills-Bengals. We'll get to the Niners, Cowboys game. What in the world were the Cowboys trying to do on that final play? We'll get into all that good stuff as well. But we got to start off today with the New York Giants as their feel-good season comes to a close on Saturdays. They get blown out by the Philadelphia Eagles 38-7. Giants are eliminated. Eagles move on, and they will host the Niners next weekend in the NFC Championship game. And the Giants season comes to a really, really tough end. And look, I kind of mentioned I was all week long, I was kind of drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit with the Giants where, this time last week we were talking about them coming off of a really good win against the Vikings on the road to win the wild card game. And about this time last week, literally this time 7 days ago, I was talking about how the Giants had a really good chance of taking down the Eagles. They had a chance. There was definitely, it's not crazy to say that they could. A lot of this game you kind of based off your prediction off of what you saw the final week of the season where Jalen Hurts wasn't fully healthy. The Giants' backups almost went into Philly on the road and defeated the Eagles. They came out flat. Look, to start the game, to come out of the game and to get the to get 7 points on the board quickly for the Eagles, they stomped right down the Giants' throats. I think there was 2 third downs that drive where the Giants just were in some press coverage. There wasn't much, Dory Jackson, that one play to A.J. Brown. It was really bad. They stomped right down. But, right then and there, you were like, okay, that's the same way it started against Minnesota, where the Vikings just went downfield, got off to an early lead. Giants made the adjustments, go on and win the game, put up 30-plus points, all that good stuff. The bottom line is this. I'm going to, I'll talk a little about the game here, but the bottom line, just as a general overview of this game, the Eagles are the more talented team. They were 10 times more talented. I mean, watching this game, I don't want to try and compare it to college, but it was almost like watching a really good college team versus a really bad college team. It's almost like when Alabama plays up against some of those really bad teams or any of those teams. Alabama plays up against the Citadel. I don't want to use that. I'm not trying to say the Giants are really bad, but the Giants have a lot of work to do until they get to the level of the Eagles, until they get to the level of the 49ers, even to the level of the Dallas Cowboys. And I know they lost, and I know, you don't want to hear right now me praising the Cowboys, which I'm not. I'm just saying in terms of roster, in terms of talent, the Giants have a lot of work to do. But again, this all circles back. Dable deserves a ton of credit for the way this season went for the New York Giants. He deserves a ton of credit. This was a team that many thought 4-6 wins. I think I had them at 6-11. I didn't believe in Daniel Jones. The roster had no talent. We were all wondering, okay, what's going to, everyone's like, okay, well, you get healthy Saquon Barkley. Maybe he can do stuff. But even that, you went into the year and said, how can Saquon Barkley stay healthy? You had all these questions going into the season, and a lot of them got answered. Daniel Jones is your guy. I don't foresee him going anywhere. I know he's a free agent again. The process has got to begin. But Joe Shane today in his press conference seemed to make it pretty clear that he wants Daniel Jones back. He wants him back. He wants him back with the Giants. Obviously, there's the negotiating part of it where both sides will do what's best for each side. The Giants will do what's best for them, and Daniel Jones will do what's best for him as well to work out a deal. But I think Daniel Jones is your guy. You found your guy in Jones. What happens with Saquon Barkley? Well, that's a question. You hear rumors today about Barkley wanting, about $16 million, which is around what Christian McCaffrey's got. He declined $12 million contract, so they're still a little bit far apart. Do the Giants give him that? Do the Giants want to give him that? Do fans want him to get that with his injury history? That's obviously a question that will be answered, but the way Dable took this team from a team that probably should have only won 4 or 6 games. Again, that was the expectation going into the year. Win 4 to 6 games and lay the foundation. See what you have in Daniel Jones. Most likely you find yourself top 10 draft pick, drafting another quarterback. That was mostly the expectation. To get the Giants to 9 wins this year was a heck of a job. And you ran into a buzzsaw. You ran into a team that was much better. I mean, the Eagles ran all over the Giants. But back to the point of where the Giants were just outmatched. Number one, they were on the road. Hostile environment, on the road, tough place to play. Giants had really no chance. The game was over before it even started, hindsight 2020. It really was. I mean, when you look at this Eagles team when they're healthy, they're lethal. And that's why they went 14-3 in the regular season. And that's why it took them, 11 weeks for them to finally lose a game to Washington on Monday Night Football. But they went 14-3 for a reason. They're a very good team. They're also a very well-coached team, and it's almost like everything that the Eagles did was to the Giants' disadvantage, and they just kept running it. Giants this season, excuse me, the Giants' struggles this season have been stopping the run, and the Eagles just kept running. Something that I took away from this game for the New York Giants was they got to get faster. They got a lot of slow guys. They got to get faster. In terms of the speed of the Eagles, they got to get faster. The Giants linebackers in this game, the speed difference was just unbelievable. It really was. The Eagles in this game, they ran, first of all, they had 268 rushing yards. 268 rushing yards. They dominated the Giants in this game with rushing yards. They also dominated the time of possession. They had the ball for 35 minutes. Giants only had the ball for 24 minutes. When they went down there and scored and the Giants didn't score, then they went down there and scored again, 14-0. The 4th and 8 play call I disagreed with. I love being aggressive. I know Dable's aggressive. I would have tried to pin the Eagles back. Instead, you gave them a short field. They went down and scored again. The only time in this game that the Giants gave you something to say, okay, you get a stop and you score, make it a 2-score game, was when it was 28-0 and they ended up scoring a touchdown and it made it 28-7. You knew the game was over by then, but at least, they showed a little bit of life. That was their only time they showed any life. And you're like, okay, I'm sure some Giants fans, the optimistic part of you wants to say, okay, you got to stop, you score, you make it a 2-score game, go into the fourth quarter down 2 scores. It's not crazy, but it just got out of hand. Some bad throws by Daniel Jones. He had that bad interception to James Bradbury. But I will tell you this. This loss for the Giants, I don't want to use blessing in disguise as a word, but this loss for the Giants, in a way just proves to the point even more of what they have to do this offseason. Because let's just say the Giants lost 27-24, and it was on a game-winning field goal. They played great, and the Eagles didn't come to play. The Eagles still found a way to win, but it was a close game. You come away with this game and saying, okay, the Giants aren't far off. When in reality, the Giants are really far. Now, they need a lot of pieces. They do. They need linebackers. I would assume they probably add another corner. They need another interior offensive lineman, need another interior defensive lineman. You need a receiver. Whether they go in the draft and sign a guy or draft a guy, you heard DeAndre Hopkins is on the market. Do you go out and, trade for him? He's a possible trade piece that the Cardinals might look to trade. Do you make a blockbuster trade for him? How does Joe Shane approach this? Does he bring in a guy like a DeAndre Hopkins? What's going on in Vegas? Do you go all out and maybe try to trade for Devontae Adams if he's out there? Or do you draft a guy? Or do you sign a solid receiver like a guy, maybe like an Allen Lazard, put Isaiah Hodgins, draft a guy, Wan'Dale Robinson, bring back Shepard, and you kind of have an okay group? How do the Giants attack the receiving core will really be interesting. And if Barkley doesn't resign, then you're going to need to figure out who's your running back. So the Giants have a lot to do. They really do. Joe Shane's got a lot on his hands. Saturday reminded me a lot of Game 4 of this past season with the Yankees against the Astros. The Astros dominating the Yankees showed how far away the Yankees really were. This game to the Giants, I wouldn't say how far away they are because they got to the divisional round. So I don't want to use far away in terms of making the playoffs, but does show how much I'll use the word how much work they need to do to get to the Eagles. Watching the Eagles run all over you, that's what the Giants need to do. The Giants need to do everything they do needs so then this doesn't happen again. If you face the Eagles next year, 38-7 should not happen. You can't lose by 31. That's the bottom line. So everything that the Giants do moving, here on out, moving forward, has to be to match the strengths of what the Eagles do well and the rest of the division. Because the bottom line is, and I found this stat today, and I found it interesting because when you win 9 games when you get to the playoffs, your division record doesn't get talked about much. But the Giants this year were 1-5-1 in their division. They were 1-5-1 in the division. Or, I'm sorry, 1-4-1. 1-5-1, including the playoff game on Saturday. If you include the playoff game, the Giants' only win in the division came to Washington on that Sunday night game, who ended up missing the playoffs. They also tied to Washington. They got swept by Dallas, and they lost 3 times to Philly. Dallas and Philly are going to be the teams you're going to be going at it for a very long time. So I don't want to try, look, the Giants had an excellent year, and I'm not trying to make it seem like the year was a failure. They stunk. They got blown out. I'm not trying to say that, but they do have a lot of work to do. And at times this year, their winning covered up some of their flaws, but the flaws really came to life on Saturday with the way the Eagles came out and played. And the Giants need to remember that game, and they need to take a look back, figure out what went wrong, and how, because that's what the Giants got to do. The Giants need to build a team so they can take down Philly, take down the Cowboys. They need to close the gap, because the gap's pretty large. They need to close it. And you got to trust Joe Shane and Brian Dable. But all things considered, when you look at the season as a whole, it was a Giant success. I mean, the Giants weren't, again, this was a Giant team that was expected to win 4 to 6 games. Right? And I was wrong. I mean, I had them around 6 wins. For them to go out and win 9 games, win a playoff game, go into Philly with where you felt like you had somewhat of a chance. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be this bad. I predicted the Giants to win again. I was drinking the Giant Kool-Aid a little bit, being in the New York market, hearing everybody talk about it, seeing that game. They played really well. I mean, they played really well against the Vikings. Something that I was very interested, that I questioned, the Giants, especially against the Vikings, got away with blitzing, and they played a lot of soft zone. Giants all year, Wink Martindale blitzes, and he plays man coverage. And I'm not saying you got to play man every single play, but the Giants did not play much man against Minnesota and did not play much man against Philly. And to be honest with you, that Minnesota game was not their best defensive performance. It got covered up, number one, because they won and because the offense went out there and scored 31 points. But the Giants' defense did not play well in either of these games. They really didn't. And again, I'm not trying to say that the offense was spectacular. I mean, when you score 7 points and you have to turn the ball over and you can't get the run game going, any of that stuff, it doesn't help either. I mean, all phases of the game were bad. I mean, every phase. Offense was bad, defense was bad, collectively. You could say that, or it's just the Eagles are really good. And again, it's all about closing the gap. It's all about closing the gap now. And the Giants have a big offseason ahead. Because now reality kind of sets in. Your feel-good season's done. Now you have a lot of work to do. You have a lot of work to do. No matter how this season went, the Giants were going to have a lot of work to do. Because we went into this year, we all knew they lacked talent. Because it's a full-on rebuild. I mean, geez. Dave Gettleman left the Giants an absolute train wreck. But they got salary cap. You trust the GM. You trust the head coach. You trust the front office. Now it's all about bringing in the right pieces. It'll be interesting. I'm really interested to see how they'll approach the receiver position. Do they draft, or do they go out and make a blockbuster trade and bring in like a big name like a DeAndre Hopkins? How does that play out? But it all starts with you got to bring back Daniel Jones. You got to bring him back. That's what it starts. Bring back Daniel Jones and you build the rest of the offense. That's how I think it. That's personally how I see it going. Giants season's over. Eagles move on, and they'll face the Niners. All right, so the first game on Saturday, actually going backwards a little bit here, was Chiefs-Jaguars. Chiefs get the win here, 27-20 over Jacksonville. This is one of these games, if you're a Jaguars fan, you go back and play the what-if game in your head for the entire offseason. Jaguars had plenty of chances in this game, plenty of opportunities, and they just couldn't take advantage from the Patrick Mahomes injury to where he has to go off the field. And this isn't against... I'm not saying Chad Henne's a bad quarterback, but that was an opportunity for the Jaguars. Patrick Mahomes, the best player, you can make the argument in the NFL, is not playing for a drive. And you let Chad Henne go down there and construct a beautiful drive and go down and score a touchdown. That can't happen. They had a couple really bad turnovers. Jamal Agnew had that terrible one in the red zone where they could have scored and made it a 3-point game and made it really interesting. Instead, he fumbles. It was too little too late. They made a lot of mistakes. Again, I said this going into this game. It's all fun and games coming back at home against the Chargers and a not very good coach team. But when you're going up against a well-coached team on the road, it's going to be tough to dig yourself out of holes, especially when you shoot yourself in the foot. And the Jaguars did a lot of that. And this game, I mean, it was 7-7 early on, right? Kelsey scored, then they go down and Christian Kirk scored. He had a drop. Lawrence had the late interception. Agnew had the fumble. They let Chad Henne go down and score when Patrick Mahomes was out. So they had moments in this game where they could have capitalized. I mean, they did. Even Mahomes' mobility, something that Mahomes doesn't get talked about much. He uses his legs a little bit. He's able to. And he couldn't do that, late in the game with that ankle. The Chiefs couldn't take advantage of that, or the Jaguars couldn't take advantage of that. So this was just a game where, I look back at this game, and I don't so much look back at it and say, man, that was a dominant performance by the Kansas City Chiefs. I look back on it and say, the Jaguars, for the second straight week in a row, killed themselves. I mean, it's really what it was. They hurt themselves. It was self-inflicted wounds that lost them this game. Drops, turnovers. I mean, turnovers, you cannot turn the ball over in the red zone. That is killer in football games. Turnovers are bad to begin with. When you're in the red zone, 5-10 yards away from scoring and you turn the ball over, that will kill you in games. And that's what happened here in Jacksonville. So, Jacksonville, look, they got a talented team. They've got the quarterback. They definitely got the coach. They made a great comeback. It was a feel-good story. From starting the year, they had that long losing streak. It looked ugly. To come back, win 9 games, win the AFC South. The Jaguars, are set up. They got good playoff experience. And I'll tell you this. Jaguars, watching those 2 games, you could definitely tell that was a lot of these guys' first times in the playoffs. Like Trevor Lawrence, some of these guys, you could definitely tell. The moment at times looked a little too big for them. And that's not a knock on them. I'm just saying that's kind of my feeling from it. A lot of mistakes, a lot of things you wouldn't see. I mean, Christian Kirk, who's been very good all year long, that drop he had, that was terrible. That would have put him in the red zone, possibly even scored. That wasn't good either. And to only lose by 7 on the road against Kansas City, I know the other one was a garbage time field goal that set up the onside kick, which didn't mean anything, but still, 7 points is 7 points. Some people lost out on money, too. For the people that had Kansas City covering the 9.5, that field goal really hurt you because it would have been a 10-point win. Instead, it's only a 7-point game. But this is valuable experience for them. This really is. And I'll tell you what, Jaguars are going to come back next year, and they're going to be in contention yet again. And I'll tell you what, it's not crazy to say for this Jaguars team to be not the Super Bowl favorite next year, but it's not crazy to say that they can make a run at the AFC title game. It's really not. They lost by 7 against Kansas City. I understand Mahomes' banged-up ankle, but they made a ton of mistakes. And they still were in the game. Last week, they found a way to win with their quarterback throwing 4 interceptions. You limit those mistakes, you limit those turnovers, Jaguars probably would be in the title game right now. Not probably, they would be. And they'd be getting ready to face up against the Bengals in Cincinnati. Instead, they're on their way home, back to Jacksonville, and it's a repeat of next year. Or last year. Repeat of next year. Foreshadowing. Do we get Bengals Chiefs next year for the 3rd straight year in a row? I don't know. That's way down the road. That's a year from now. But this is a repeat of last year's game. Literally the exact repeat. Chiefs, Bengals in Kansas City, in Arrowhead. Last year it was Chiefs, Bengals, Arrowhead. So it's literally the same exact game as last year. Except Bengals have a year, except Bengals have experience. Now they have a whole nother year. They've proven to the NFL that last year wasn't a fluke. Many thought going into this season that last year might have been a fluke for Cincinnati. They started out 0-2, had 2 bad losses. They come back, and find a way to get to the AFC title game. And, they go 12-4, and they still have a very good year. And Bengals are a very good team. But the Chiefs, the biggest thing is going to be Patrick Mahomes' health. And I don't know how much, if all he'll practice this week for Cincinnati or for Kansas City. But Patrick Mahomes next week, his health is the biggest thing. His mobility not being there is going to be tough. They're going to have to rely on Isaiah Pacheco a lot, which they did. They ran the ball 30 times. The Chiefs running the ball 30 times in a game, that's uncharacteristic. That's crazy. That really is. Maybe it's just me. Again, I don't watch every single Kansas City Chiefs game. but I feel like they throw a lot more than they do run, and that makes sense. I mean, they threw the ball 37 times. I mean, Patrick Mahomes threw it 30 times, and I know he was out for a little bit, but they ran the ball 30 times in this game. So you're going to see a very heavy run team. That's what you're going to see next week. If Mahomes isn't 100%, you're going to see them rely on Pacheco. You're going to see them rely on McKinnon. Pacheco had a very good game. 12 carries, 95 yards. That was almost 8 yards a carry. He also had a catch for 6 yards. Short passes. You're probably going to see a lot of runs. You're going to see a little bit of a different Chiefs team, which is kind of what you saw in this game against Jacksonville when Mahomes went out. And even when Mahomes was in, you saw a little bit of a different team where a lot more runs, not many, style, running out of the pocket, sidearm throws. But Mahomes, I mean, playing with a high ankle sprain, that's not easy either. That's not going to be easy at all. Playing with a high ankle sprain is tough. So it'll be interesting. It stinks that Mahomes is not 100% because you really feel like next week could be a really good game, but it feels like it has that potential to be lopsided if Mahomes isn't 100% and he's not playing well. Run game. Pacheco next week is going to he's going to be an unsung hero. He's going to have a huge game. He's going to have to if the Chiefs want any chance of winning next week. But they move on. They get the job done. And a credit to Chad Henne. Look, he came into the game for an injured Patrick Mahomes. If he doesn't, that was a big drive. I mean, he went down, conducted a 5 for 7, 23 yards, 1 touchdown he threw on that drive. Efficient, quick, went down, scored. You don't have that touchdown, it's a different ballgame. So, credit to him too. Chad Henne doesn't get much attention. The big outcome of this game is Chiefs win and Mahomes is hurt. But that drive by Henne was big. To come into the game cold like that against a good Jaguars team, that also goes back to my point of the Jaguars not capitalizing on it. But a lot of these, some of these, quarterbacks here, backups, Henne going down making some plays. Purdy's got the Niners in the championship game. Look out. It's the year of the backups. But yeah, Chiefs moving on. Arrowhead, Cincinnati, Kansas City. And now we move on to the first game yesterday, which was Bengals-Bills. Bills obviously done. Bengals on their way to Kansas City. They'll play up against the Chiefs next weekend, as I've mentioned about 20 times already today. Looking forward to that game. Should be a really good game. Rematch of last year. First off, I'll start off by saying this. The dream of a AFC championship game, we heard it's going to be in Atlanta. Chiefs, Bills, AFC championship game. The dream of that being the future, like you heard some rumors about the NFL possibly voting on it to have future the AFC and NFC championship games be at neutral site. The possibility of that, the dream is dead before it even started, as the Bills lose. And I'm going to start from the Bills first. You know how I feel about the Bengals. Very good team. Burrow was great yesterday. I mean, the Bengals are a force. They're a force. They don't get as much credit as they deserve. And everybody was counting them out. Everybody was like, it's in Atlanta, get your tickets, all that stuff. They were the past 2 postseasons. Okay, last year, some people were saying, this is just a hot team. Don't believe in the Bengals. Last year, okay, that's one thing. But this year, the Bengals are legit. And I feel like the NFL has a tough time. The media has a tough time just admitting that the Bengals are a really good team. Like, the media wants it to be the Chiefs and the Bills so badly in the AFC title game. They want it so bad. And yet the Bengals went on the road yesterday. Get this. And this makes the loss for the Bills even more embarrassing. You're at home, it's snowing, and you still lose by 17. I mean, not many teams can go into Buffalo and win when it's snowing on the road. And that's a knock on the Bills, but that's also a ton of credit given to Cincinnati. And it's not like it's a Miami team going on the road. It's not like the Dolphins going on the road winning in the snow, which they almost did last week. I mean, it wasn't snowing, but it was cold. They did lose earlier in the season in the snow. But it's not like it's that. Cincinnati, cold weather team. I get that, but still. The Bengals or the Bills at home when it's snowing, I mean, that's as much home field advantage as you can get, and they laid a dud. And I'll tell you this, I've been saying this, and I don't want to, buff my chest out and act like I'm the smartest guy ever and I know everything. But I have come on this podcast almost every week since those 2 games against the Jets. And I have said this Bills team is not the team the media is making them out to be. I've said it for weeks now. I've said it going all the way back to that Week 9 win when the Jets defeated the Bills. And maybe that was part of the Jets fandom inside of me saying, oh, the Jets just beat the Bills. We're not scared of the Bills anymore. All that great stuff. Maybe that was, at that time, maybe that was a little bit of it. But even the second time, even when we lost to the Bills, we were in that game with Joe Flacco playing a couple snaps. Let that sink in. We still only lost that game by 8 in their own building with Mike White playing with broken ribs, which he ended up missing the next 2 games with. We still were in that game. So that just shows you, that right there to me, I've been calling it for weeks now. This Bills team was not the same they were last year. And you really start to wonder, what more is it going to take for this Buffalo team to get over the top? I mean, really, you really start to question that. And we can all sit here and say, oh, as long as Josh Allen's the quarterback, they'll be in it every year. They might be. They will be. I mean, Bills aren't going to go 4-13 next year and miss the playoffs. They'll be back next year. But I mean, in years past, we've always been able to point out something that was a weakness of the Bills. You said, okay, it was the edge. Okay, it was the line. Like this year, it's like third year in a row. They had that loss against Kansas City, lost last year against Kansas City, now to lose to Cincinnati. The Bills are not what the media makes them out to be. And the Bills have some issues. I mean, you look at the roster, and you might look at the roster. This is the big question. Are the Bills really as talented as we think they are? We might look at them and say, oh, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Trey White, Tremaine Edmonds, all these guys on defense, all these guys on offense. It's obviously not working. And I don't want to just sit here and say, oh, fire Sean McDermott. I don't want to just pull out the coaching card all of a sudden. Look, he's gotten them to the playoffs 3 straight years. They've gone deep. They've won a playoff round. Right? So, they were 1 game away 2 years ago against Kansas City. Last year, they had that heartbreaking loss. And then this year, they just lay a dud against Cincinnati. But I feel like I saw this coming from a mile away. I've been saying it for weeks now. Last week, the Bills were winning, but they were barely winning. They were not good enough wins to take down teams like Cincinnati, to take down teams like Kansas City. So also, and again, first part of the year, they were rolling. But something happened to this team where they just haven't been able to really play at a high level. They barely beat Miami a couple weeks ago in the snow. They barely, even that New England game, the Patriots made it close there for a while. Bills pulled away late. You had that game against the Browns that they barely won, right? That game against the Jets. The Jets were banged up at quarterback. Bills only won by 8. If the Jets go into that game if Mike White stays healthy that entire game, the Jets probably win that game, right? And I'm not trying to sit here and make excuses for the Jets, but it's more towards a concern for the Bills. I've been saying this for weeks now. Even that Bears game, they got off to a slow start, a really slow start in that Bears game. It was a 10-6 game at halftime. It wasn't until a massive 29-point second half where the Bills came out and poured it on. But you're talking about a Chicago Bears team where the Bills went into halftime trailing. If that's against any other team, Bills lose that game. And again, I say on this podcast all the time, a win's a win, a loss is a loss. I'm not trying to sit here and, oh, it's a win, but they played bad. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to show you that this Bills team, it's really starting to turn out where they're not as talented as we think they are. They're really not. They're not as good as we think they are. And at what point do you reevaluate the team as a whole and say, okay, what is it going to take to get this team over the top? Year in and year out, favorites. I mean, I believe this year they were the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl. To have like the same defeat every single season, to not able to even get there every single year, or not even to be able to get there right now, it's tough. And look, I'm not trying to sit here and say the Bills' Super Bowl window is closing. Look, you probably still have 5-6 really good years of Josh Allen left. But now's the time. And I just start to wonder, how much more of losing divisional round games, how much more of losing in the playoffs can Sean McDermott take? Is it going to take, what type of coach is it going to take to put this team over the top? You start to wonder. And I'll tell you what, the Bills this offseason have a lot of free agents. I believe Edmonds is a free agent, Singletary's a free agent, Poyer's a free agent. They've got a lot of free agents. They really do. And they're going to have some holes. They're not going to be able to get all those guys back. It sounds like Poyer's going to want more money and go elsewhere. They need to get the running back figured out. Okay, they might want more consistency as the running back, whether that's drafting a guy like Bijan Robinson, going out and trading for someone. You heard this year that they were a little interested in McCaffrey. Nothing obviously panned out as he ended up going to San Francisco and has been great there, and we'll get to them here in a second. But this Bills team, there's some issues. There is, because it's not good enough. It obviously isn't. And it's every year, it's like deja vu. Every single season now, it's the same exact result. And it's almost the same team. And you don't really look at this Bills team and say, oh, they got holes here, they got holes here. It's like, oh, figure out this position, they'll be back next season. Like, they've done all that. Okay, you want to point to Von Miller being out. They weren't able to get much pressure on Burrow. Okay, but Von Miller's not the same player he once was. Von Miller's not the difference maker he once was. If we're talking about this 5 years ago, Von Miller wasn't out there and they lost, okay, you might have me there. If Von Miller was out there, Bills maybe win. Okay, that could be a valid point. But Von Miller's not a game changer like he used to be. He'll come in and have a big sack, but he's not going to go out there and have a 3-sack game and completely destroy the opposing quarterback. He's not that type of player anymore. He's just not. And he'll probably only decrease even more now with that. But it's just, it's like every year it's like, okay, Bills, all right, this season, this is it. And it's just not it. So, I'm not going to, Allen has a turnover problem. He does. He has to clean that up. Yesterday, though, I didn't think that loss was on him. The Bengals are just a better team. Like, that's the bottom line, and that's the concern. I've said this now for weeks again. The Bills, the media makes them out to be this top 3 team. The Chiefs are better and the Bengals are better. And that's a worry. Is that coaching? Is it roster? Brendan Beane and the Bills front office has a lot to figure out this offseason. Because this is like a big reality check. Okay, the last 2 years you lost 2 heartbreaking losses, 2 tough ones in Kansas City. Okay, but to get destroyed in your own building when it's snowing, divisional game, it's just, this is like a real reality check for Buffalo. And I'm not saying they're going to enter a massive rebuild. They shouldn't do that. But, again, is it coaching? Is the roster just not as good as many think it is? It'll be interesting. It really will be. But another year of not winning a Super Bowl. Another year of playoff disappointment for Buffalo. And you really start to question what's wrong and what's it going to take. Because right now, yesterday, the Bengals looked a lot better than Buffalo. They really did. They looked a lot better. They didn't look like the Eagles against the Giants better. They didn't look that much better. But they looked a lot better. And when you compare the rosters, it's almost like it shouldn't be that bad. That's where you start to question, does this Bills team have bigger issues than maybe on the surface it looks like they really have? You really start to question that. I'm not saying locker room issues. I'm saying roster issues. Is this roster really as good as we think it is? Seems like it might not be, because that's 3 years in a row now with a very similar roster not getting the job done. When you see a team like Cincinnati 1 game away from back-to-back Super Bowls, the Chiefs have already won one. The other AFC teams have figured this out. The Bills seem to still be in the same situation with another playoff exit. So it'll be interesting to see how the Bills approach this offseason. Diggs was obviously upset, and I would be too. I mean, he came here to win a championship, and they're not getting it done. So next year's a big year for Buffalo. It really is. If you have another exit next year, like a similar exit where you win the wild card round, lose the divisional round, then you could seriously start to question Sean McDermott. That's now 4 straight years of Super Bowl expectations, and to go below the bar every year, that's, that's a problem. And again, I'm a Jet fan, so I'm sitting here and, I'm criticizing the Bills for losing in the playoffs when my team hasn't even been here, and I get that, but expectations are completely different, and the Bills fall short again. So we'll see. We'll see what takes place there. And the final game was Niners-Cowboys. Niners got the win 19-12. Cowboys are in a similar boat with the Bills. Every year they fall short. Every single season they've been falling short. At this point, I think it's just Jerry Jones. I really do. And I brought up this point yesterday. I was thinking, all the teams that are really good, like all the teams that have success, you really don't hear about the owners. Do we hear about the 49ers owner? Do we really hear about the Eagles owner much? Do we hear about the Chiefs owner much? No, we hear about the GMs. Even Buffalo. I'll use them as an example too. Brandon Beane. We don't hear about the owners of teams much. The good teams. The bad teams, we hear about the owners. And teams like the Cowboys, who year in and year out, disappointment. Jerry Jones has a lot to do with this. It just seems like he has a little too much control. And again, I don't want to sit here and say that his problem was, Jerry Jones is the reason Dak Prescott turned the ball over a lot. But the Cowboys, again, you find yourself in a situation like, what does this team need to do to get over the top? Like, what do they need to do? And last week they looked really good, but I said it on Friday. This Cowboys team is only going to win if Prescott can limit the turnovers. And he did a very good job against Tampa. Did not do a good job yesterday. 2 interceptions, 2 bad interceptions, almost a third that he almost had, which would have really sealed it prior to the game even ending. It looks like McCarthy will be back. I mean, again, I don't really know what more he can do as a coach, back-to-back 12-win years. Some of this relies on roster. The roster's talented. They've got some talent there. Do you add another receiver? Again, it's similar to Buffalo. The Cowboys are similar to the Bills, where you really can't look at the roster and say, oh, that's the position of need. They've got pieces. I mean, they got a good tight end, although Dalton Schultz had 2 really bad plays in that game where he had the play where he didn't step out of bounds. He lowered his shoulder and took a hit and went backwards, and forward progress was stopped. Clock kept going. Instead, he should have put forward progress, got out of bounds, and the clock would have stopped. That took a lot of time off of it. And then he nonchalantly caught the ball, and he never even dragged his foot. He was kind of lazy about it. And that would have set up probably a 55-yard Hail Mary, which has a better chance than going 75 yards lateraling it. Which that last play, look, a lot of people are criticizing McCarthy today. What in the world was that last play? Enough. What are you going to draw up? 75 yards. I don't want to hear people complaining about Mike McCarthy's final play call of the game. I don't want to. Who even knows if that was him? That could be collectively coaches, everybody as a whole coming together. If you're criticizing Mike McCarthy today, tell me what you would have done better in the last play of the game. That's something that's frustrating. I'm looking through all the apps today, and everyone's like, McCarthy, what was that final play call of the game? What is he supposed to do? You're on your own, 20, 25-yard line, 5 seconds left. You need to go 80 yards lateraling the football. Bill Belichick couldn't do that. Bill Parcells couldn't do that. Not many coaches could do that. I've seen a lateral happen twice. Miami Hurricanes, the college team, did it a few years back against Duke. And in Miami, Dolphins against the Patriots a couple years ago did it. And the Dolphins got a little lucky because the Patriots put in Gronk as like a safety, and Kenyon Drake beat him to the pylon. If there was a safety back there, Drake would have gone tackled. So it was more of a defensive malfunction by New England than it was and that's really what it is. Laterals are usually a defensive malfunction than it is a offensive, really good play. Because a lot of times you'll get one guy's on the one end of the field, the defense all goes to one side of the field, you throw it across the field, and it's just 30 yards of just green grass. I think the plan of the play, though, was for Turpin to catch it, lateral it back to Elliott, and have all those offensive linemen block for him. Which, the chances of that are so slim. Elliott got ran over, though, on that final play. But, again, the Cowboys are in an interesting situation, too, where another playoff exit. you start to wonder, look, Jerry Jones is 80 years old. You start to wonder here, as he really gets older, how much more of this can he take? What does he do? Does he maybe give up some control of the team and give it to more of the football people make the football decisions? Does he do that? Because this Cowboys team every year, they're falling up short. They're falling short. What's Prescott's future? I don't want to sit here and say that Dak Prescott's not going to be back next year. I'd assume right now he probably is, but is next year a kind of a bust year for Dak where it's, turnovers, again, self-inflicted wounds, similar to Jacksonville's the reason why Cowboys lost this game. The Niners didn't play a perfect game either. Their offense started to get going in the second half. One thing's for certain, Brett Maher's probably not going to be back with Dallas next year. If Brett Maher's got a job next year, that will be shocking. I would be shocked. The Niners really started to pour it on in the fourth quarter when they put up 10 in the fourth, and Kittle had a really nice game, and Purdy started to play well. But yeah, this Cowboys team, again, they fall short. The regular season, they'll win 12, 13 games. You get to the postseason, and it's just, they fall apart. Dak Prescott next year, if I had to guess right now, and I don't want to try to predict, next season, but right now, if I had to guess, Dak next year is a make-or-break year for Dak Prescott, where if he doesn't go out and if you don't get to the NFC Championship game, he's probably gone and they probably restart. If they can find a trade partner, to bring in somebody out. How much is that going to upgrade? Like, the Cowboys have been down this road before. We had the same conversation last year about Dak Prescott. We're having the same conversation again. Every year it falls on the quarterback. When does it eventually fall on Jerry Jones either having too much power or just the fact that, again, similar to the Bills, is there bigger issues with this team? But America's team, the Cowboys, to lose again. I know a lot of people are happy about that. And the Niners win. And Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers will head to Philly for a matchup there against the Eagles. And I'll tell you what, the start of this game, I was like, okay, the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. But with the way the Niners ended, the way their offense started to play, that's the way they can play. Like that when they're at their best, that's really good. That's really good. So, that's, this Niners team is very talented. Very talented. And, Purdy, again, taking them for another win in their one game. Brock Purdy's one game away from a Super Bowl. Let that sink in. One game away from making the Super Bowl. So that's pretty wild. Definitely crazy for him and for the Niners as well. So that's your recap. Niners, Eagles, 3:05 p.m. Eastern next weekend. And then it's Bengals, Chiefs, 6:30 p.m. Eastern next weekend. Fox got the Niners, Eagles, and Bengals, Chiefs will be on CBS. By the way, right now, early lines for this game. The NFC Championship game, Philly is an early 2.5-point favorite, and the AFC Championship game, so far the line right now is even, which I think it probably will be. I think the Bengals should get a slight edge. I know Patrick Mahomes is great, and he's not human at times. He's playing with a high ankle sprain. You can't sit here and tell me they're gonna favor a quarterback playing through a high ankle sprain over Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. I disagree with that, but we'll see. Anyway, so I want to quickly get into the game last night. So the Nets beat the Warriors, and this also kind of will just tie in here with my New York sports update. Just quickly on Kyrie. Nets were 0-4 without Kevin Durant. 2 big wins the past 2 games against the Jazz and then against the Warriors, which were 2 big wins, 2 much needed wins, 2 wins this team needed. Like they were losing, weren't playing well, guys weren't stepping up, got 2 massive wins, much needed wins. But Kyrie Irving, look, and I've said this a lot on the show, I'm honest. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat things. When Kyrie Irving was playing bad, I was saying it for days. He's not playing well. In those 2 games against the Celtics, he shot 4 of 18 from 3. And he shot a combined 16 of 44 from the field, 22.2% from 3, 36.4% from the field. Those were in the losses against the Celtics and the Thunder. But he has turned it around the last 2 games. Jazz, he shot 18 of 29, 8 of 15 from 3, 48 points. He also had 11 rebounds, had a double-double. They got the win there. And then against the Warriors last night, he shot 12 of 22, 5 of 7 from 3, 38 points. That's 86 points combined in 2 games. Combined, he shot 30 of 51. That's 58.8%. And from 3, 13 of 22. That's 59.9%. So the last 2 games for Kyrie Irving have been very good, and he's been stepping up. And this is what we need out of him. And we need this, continued out of him, out of this team over the next couple games. They got the Sixers on Wednesday. Then they got the Pistons on the second half of a back-to-back. They'll head home for 4 games against the they're home for 4 games. It will be the Pistons, Knicks, Lakers. I apologize. 3 games. Pistons, Knicks, Lakers, and the Sixers on Wednesday, which will be a big game. And Royce O'Neal last night also stepped up in a really nice way over the Warriors. He shot 6 of 10, 4 of 7, 16 points. Your leaders, Claxton had another big game, 24 points, 15 rebounds. Claxton's a top 5 center in the NBA, without a doubt. I mean, he's been phenomenal this year. Claxton's been amazing this season. He has been great, and he's a guy that I'm looking forward to watching for a very long time. So guys have stepped up. Guys are stepping up, and Kyrie Irving, these is what we need at him. Those first couple games, it was terrible. I mean, he was shooting way below, some games under 30%, wasn't making shots, there was no energy. The last 2 games, to beat Utah, scoring 48 points, and then to beat the Warriors last night, who, by the way, it's Stephen Curry and the Warriors. This wasn't no Stephen Curry-less Warriors team. This was Curry and the Warriors to go on the road and beat them in comeback fashion. Massive from Kyrie, and we need this from him. I look at these next couple games. You like your chance against the Pistons. Pistons are terrible. You win them. You beat them. Knicks are going to be interesting, but they're beatable. Sixers are going to be tough. Lakers, you like your chances there, but they're playing pretty good. They got Rui Hachimura. They made the trade today. And then after that, you got the Celtics again on the road, and then you got the Wizards winnable, and then you come home for a while, and you have a lot of home games after that. So the Nets, they got a decently favorable schedule coming up. But if they keep playing like this, 29-17, they are the 4 seed, 5.5 games out. Big game on Wednesday against the Sixers. And if Kyrie's got to continue to play at this level, because they've got to continue to keep their head above water. Right now, 2-4, 2-game win streak. Find a way. If you can find a way the next 4 games here, they got 4 games to close out January. 3 of them are at home. If you can find a way to split these final 2 games, get to 4-6 without KD, that wouldn't be terrible. 10 games without KD to go 4-6, that could be much worse. It could be a lot worse. To lose your first 4 games without Kevin Durant and then to finish 4-6, that means you're 4-2 the next 6 games. That's not bad. I would not mind that. 3-1 isn't a crazy ask. I mean, if you can go 3-1 and play 500 basketball, the rest of, play 500 basketball in the 10 games without Kevin Durant, that would be really positive. Again, after starting out 0-4 without him, you have to bring that into play too. So it's all about just keeping your head above water. And for a while there, it looked like, 0-4 to start. It looked like this was going to be out of 10 games, it looked like they were going to go like 2-8 and collapse like they did last year. But these last 2 wins are promising, and maybe this team can find a way to win at a higher rate without KD. So we'll see. But as for the other games on tonight, you got Islanders, Maple Leafs, Sabres, Stars, Blue Jackets, Flames in the hockey, and Rangers, Panthers tonight at the Garden. NBA, no Knicks or Nets. We got the Pistons, Bucks, Magic, Celtics, Bulls, Hawks, Timberwolves, Rockets, Hornets, Jazz, Spurs, Trailblazers, and the Grizzlies, Kings. And college tonight, you got 2 games on. 1 big game, Kansas, Baylor is the big game on tonight for college tonight. So looking forward to those games, and we'll see how it all plays out here tonight in college basketball. Kentucky also got a big win over the weekend over Texas A&M. So they've now won 3 straight games, and big wins. They get Vanderbilt this week. You expect to win there. That will be tomorrow, and then you get a massive game against Kansas. If you can win that game, and again, Kentucky's not ranked this week. So if you can win these 2 games this week, you'll be back in the rankings, without a doubt. So big week coming up for Kentucky. And Nets day off, Knicks day off, Rangers Isles tonight. No Monday Night Football. First time in a while we haven't had Monday Night Football, but still a good amount of basketball and hockey on, so looking forward to that. So that will do it. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.